Do you think throwing money around makes you one of us? My mother said as my family turned my baby shower, which I paid for, into my sister's engagement party and left me out. So I made one phone call and 10 minutes later, they showed up at my house screaming, but I was just getting started. Hi everyone, my name is Raquel, and I'm 7 months pregnant. This is supposed to be one of the happiest times of my life, but instead, I'm here writing this with shaky hands because I just got kicked out of my own baby shower, the one I paid for. My family says I deserved it, but maybe I should start from the beginning. That day, I was radiating happiness not just because of the pregnancy, but because for once I thought my family had finally done something for me. The baby shower was supposed to be perfect, my moment, my celebration, and of course I had paid for absolutely everything. The venue, the catering, the decorations, even the party favors for the guests. My mother made a comment when I first mentioned it. A real mother provides for her child. You're not expecting us to pay for it, are you? I should have understood then, but I ignored it. I ignored every passive-aggressive comment, every suspicious look, every time my sister whispered something to my mother, and they both smiled like they knew something I didn't, because I wanted this day. So when I got out of the car in front of the event hall, hands on my growing belly, I felt nothing but excitement. That excitement lasted exactly 3 seconds because when I reached the main door and pulled the handle, it didn't budge. Locked. I knocked. Nothing. I knocked again, harder this time. From inside I heard laughter, Elena's shrill cackle, the clinking of glasses, the faint rhythm of music. My baby shower. My money. My party. And I was outside. I was about to call someone when finally the door creaked open. My mother stood there, dressed in an elegant navy blue dress, her hair perfectly styled, her lips curved in a small haughty smile. She didn't move to let me in. Instead, she leaned against the doorframe as if waiting for me to understand on my own. "Oh," she said, tilting her head. "What are you doing here?" I let out an incredulous laugh. Sure, this must be some twisted joke. It's my baby shower." She sighed as if I were the world's biggest disappointment. "Honey, this is a celebration for real mothers." The words were so absurd that I blinked. "Excuse me." My voice came out sharp, my hand tightening on my belly. "You haven't done anything for this family," she continued, her tone sugary and repulsive. "Do you think throwing money around makes you one of us?" Behind her I saw them. My aunts, my cousins, my sister, my whole family laughing, drinking champagne, with plates piled high with the food I paid for. They weren't expecting me. They hadn't counted on me because I was never supposed to be here. I felt a lump in my throat, but I forced it down. I wasn't going to give them the pleasure of seeing me break. "I paid for all of this," I said slowly, my voice dangerously low. "And we appreciate it," Elena chimed in from behind my mother, with a mocking smile. "Really, it all looks amazing. Too bad you won't be enjoying it." My Aunt Carmen laughed from the side. "Well, that's what happens when you prioritize your own well-being before family, dear." I felt the bile rising in my throat. "Are you serious?" My voice trembled. "All I've ever done is give you everything. I've supported you, helped you, paid for things you haven't even thanked me for, and now you—" "Lower your voice, Raquel," my mother hissed, her eyes darting to the hallway. "You're making a scene." A scene. And my own baby shower. And suddenly, I was 7 years old again, standing in our dimly lit kitchen, holding a crumpled drawing of a stick figure family. "Look, Mom, I made it for you." She barely looked up from the sink, scrubbing a plate so hard I thought it might break. "Raquel, not now. Go help your sister with her homework. She needs it." I swallowed the lump in my throat and did as I was told because that's what I always did. Even now, decades later, nothing had changed. I took a slow, deep breath, blinking to clear the sting in my eyes, and smiled. "Okay," I said, tilting my head. I stood there, watching my mother's cold, inscrutable expression. "A celebration for real mothers," she had said. I had paid for the hall, the food, the cake. I had planned every detail, and yet somehow I wasn't even allowed through the door. The laughter inside grew louder, floating through the crack in the door like poison. My fingers curled into fists. "Mom," I said, my voice strained. "What is going on?" She sighed as if I were taxing her patience. "Raquel, it's not a big deal. You're overreacting." I looked over her shoulder and saw my sister, Elena, in an elegant white dress, holding up her hand as a group of women admired the diamond on her finger. My stomach twisted. What is this? My voice came out quieter than I intended. Elena turned then and looked directly at me. And the smile that spread across her face, pure malice. Oh, Mom didn't tell you, she said sweetly. It's my engagement party. My world tilted. I looked back at my mother, hoping, praying for some kind of denial, some explanation that would make this not what it seemed. She didn't even blink. Raquel, she said patiently, as if speaking to a child, you have to understand. A baby is, well, it's not exactly the same as an engagement. We needed to prioritize something the whole family could celebrate. You replaced my baby shower, I whispered, barely able to get the words out. It just made more sense, she said with a slight shrug. Besides, you don't even have a husband. There it was. The real reason. Elena let out a fake sigh of sympathy. Come on, Raquel. A baby out of wedlock isn't exactly something to throw a big party for. I felt the burn behind my eyes, but I refused to let them see. I'd spent months trying to convince myself that things were different now, that my mother and sister, as selfish as they were, would at least pretend to care about me and my baby. I was wrong. I inhaled deeply, forcing myself to remain calm. Okay. Elena raised an eyebrow. Okay. I smiled. Yes, okay. Then I pulled out my phone. My mother tensed. Raquel, what are you doing? I held up a finger, dialing the number I had memorized weeks ago just in case. The phone rang twice before a smooth, professional voice answered. Ms. Lopez, I assume this is the call? It is, I said, keeping my eyes locked on my mother's. Cancel everything. A sharp intake of breath. Understood. I'll take care of it immediately. Click. Elena frowned. Wait, what do you mean cancel everything? I smiled. Oh, you'll see. And without another word, I turned and walked away. I didn't need to see their reactions. Not yet. Because in exactly 10 minutes, when Catherine's company cleared out, the catering staff left, and the guests were left standing in an empty, undecorated hall, then they would truly understand. So after I was left out of my own baby shower, which they secretly turned into my sister's engagement party, I made a call, canceled everything, and then I left. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. Because less than 10 minutes later, my entire family showed up at my house screaming. I had just walked into my apartment when the first call came. Mom. Incoming call. I let it ring. Then another. Elena. Incoming call. Declined. Then a text from my Aunt Carmen. Raquel, what have you done? The hall is empty. The guests are standing around, not knowing what to do. Call me now. I smiled. Good. I barely had time to toss my purse on the counter when I heard it. Tires screeching outside. A moment later, a furious pounding on my door. Bam, bam, bam. Raquel. Open this door right now. I took my time. I wanted them to wait. When I finally opened the door, my mother, Elena, and two of my aunts were on the threshold, faces red and trembling with rage. What have you done? My mother hissed through gritted teeth. I leaned against the door frame, arms crossed. Oh, you mean the engagement party? The one you replaced my baby shower with? The one you didn't even bother to tell me existed? Elena pushed past the door and into my apartment. You ruined everything, she shrieked, turning so fast her heels nearly skidded on my floor. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was for me? All my friends were there. The photographer was ready. The engagement cake was in the back, waiting to be brought out. And then poof. Nothing. No food, no drinks, no decorations, just a bunch of guests standing there looking stupid. I stared at her, impassive. You mean exactly how I looked when I arrived at my baby shower and discovered I wasn't welcome? Elena's lips twisted with fury. That's different, she spat. I raised an eyebrow. Different how? Because a baby shower is somehow less. Raquel. An engagement is a real celebration. Mom did what was best for the family. Really, can't you see the difference? My fingers curled into fists. The difference, I said quietly, is that I would never have done that to you. Elena rolled her eyes. Oh, don't act like such a tragic victim. You got pregnant by some guy who didn't even stick around, and you expected Mom to throw you a big party for it? It's embarrassing. Silence. I felt a knot in my stomach. Elena must have seen the flicker of pain in my expression because she smiled. Please. You think you deserve the same attention as me? She scoffed. I'm marrying into an amazing family. I have a future, a husband, a real life. What do you have, Raquel? Huh. I swallowed. Not because she was right, but because she sounded exactly like Mom. And there it was. I knew. They would never change. Get out, I said. Elena scoffed. Excuse me. I held her gaze steady and sharp. I said, get out. She opened her mouth to argue, but then my phone rang loud, sharp, cutting through the tension like a knife. The professional ringtone I had set weeks ago. My mother tensed. Elena frowned. Who is that? I smiled. Perfect. I pulled out my phone, turned the screen towards them, and watched as their faces paled at the name flashing on the screen. Attorney Juan Ramirez. Incoming call. I answered. Ms. Lopez. My lawyer's voice was clear and calm. Just confirming that all transactions have been officially reversed. Your financial separation from your family is now in effect. A slow, satisfied smile spread across my face. Thank you, Juan, I said sweetly. I appreciate you handling this so quickly. Click. I turned back to them. Silence. My mother's expression had drained completely. Elena looked like she might faint. What does that mean? She finally whispered. It means, I said brightly, that I have officially cut all financial ties. No more bailouts. No more covering your mistakes. No more sending money when Mom cries about unexpected expenses. Period. I turned to my mother. Oh, and by the way, I called the bank. That credit card you took out in my name secretly? Yeah, they know it was fraud. Elena gasped. Mom, you said she wouldn't find out. My mother flinched but said nothing. I laughed. Oh, and before I forget, Elena. She looked at me, still pale. Maybe you should check your wedding budget, because that €5,000 deposit you made using my name has been blocked. Have fun explaining that to your wonderful fiancé. Elena shrieked. You're crazy. She lunged towards me, but I took a step back and slammed the door in her face. For the first time in my life, I shut them out, and it felt incredible. It's been 2 weeks since I slammed the door in their faces, since I exposed the fraud, cut off their money supply, and left them standing outside my apartment in shock. I thought that was the end. I should have known better. Because now my mother is trying to ruin my life. For the first time in years, I felt free. The next morning, I woke up without the usual knot in my stomach. No guilt. No stress. No fear of an early morning call demanding money. Just silence. It was strange at first. I'd spent years living in a constant state of alert, waiting for the next emergency, the next manipulation, the next financial crisis that was supposedly temporary, but somehow always ended up being my responsibility. Now nothing. No texts, no calls. My mother had finally given up. Or so I thought. A week later it started small. A text from an unknown number. You're being ridiculous, Raquel. Family is family. Call your mother. Blocked. Then a voicemail from my Aunt Carmen. Raquel, honey, I don't know what's going on between you and your mother, but she's devastated. She's been crying for days. Told me you just cut her out of your life without warning, sweet. That's not like you. At least talk to her. Delete. And then the rail bomb dropped. I walked into the office that morning, coffee in hand, ready for a normal day. But the moment I stepped through the door, the whispers started. People stared, watching me. I felt the shift immediately. Something was wrong. I went straight to my desk, ignoring the murmurs, and opened my email. Subject: Urgent, Raquel Lopez. My stomach sank. I clicked. Raquel, please come to my office as soon as you read this. There's a serious matter we need to discuss. Head of HR, Laura Perez. I barely had time to process the email before my phone vibrated. Incoming call. Laura Perez, HR. I swallowed and answered. Raquel, Laura's voice was carefully measured. Can you come upstairs right now? I didn't ask questions. I just went. Laura's office was bright, modern, with shelves lined with books and certifications that made it clear she took her job very, very seriously. She gestured for me to sit down. Her expression was inscrutable. Raquel, she began slowly, we've received a complaint about you. I blinked. A complaint? She hesitated before sliding a printed email across the desk. I picked it up and the blood drained from my face. To whom it may concern, I am writing to formally report an employee of your company, Raquel Lopez, for serious ethical violations and concerning behavior. Raquel has a history of financial fraud, deceit, and emotional manipulation. She has been involved in multiple incidents where she exploited family members for financial gain, taking money under false pretenses and abandoning responsibilities she had committed to. I believe it is in your company's best interest to investigate this matter before entrusting her with any financial or sensitive information. Sincerely, Maria Lopez. I dropped the paper like it had burned me. My mother. I whispered, my throat dry. My own mother sent this. Laura looked at me intently. Raquel, I have to ask, is there any truth to this? I laughed. Really laughed. Laura. My mother is a narcissistic manipulator. She's furious that I cut her off financially. So now she's trying to ruin my job. I exhaled. And you know what? I can prove it. Laura nodded. Good. Show me. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to the proof of the theft. I placed the phone on the desk and let her read. Laura's expression darkened as she reviewed the information. Raquel, this is serious. I know. She sighed heavily and set my phone aside. Okay. Here's what we're going to do. This complaint is going straight to legal. We'll flag it as false and add a formal note to your file stating that this was an act of harassment. She looked at me intently. Raquel, do you feel safe? Do you need to file a restraining order? I blinked. I hadn't even thought of that. Did I? I bit my lip, considering the option. Not yet. But if she continues with this, maybe. Laura nodded. Keep me informed. And Raquel. Yes. You're not in trouble. Don't let her make you feel like you are. I felt something tighten in my throat. I nodded. And for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't experienced in far too long. Protection. 2 days later, I had barely processed what happened at work when the next attack came. This time it wasn't about my job. It was my home. I walked into my apartment and immediately felt that something was wrong. The welcome mat was gone. The doorbell camera ripped out. And then the mess. Hands shaking, I unlocked the door and pushed it open. Trash was strewn across the floor. Shredded papers mixed with overturned furniture. And in the middle of it all, a note written in thick black marker. You made your choice. Now live with it. I felt my pulse thrumming in my ears. I didn't need to guess who had left it. I already knew. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. 2 weeks ago, I cut ties with my toxic family. Since then, my mother has tried to ruin my job and failed. But today I came home to this. I pointed to the upturned furniture and scattered debris. A note slipped under my door. For words, written in her handwriting. You made your choice. I called the police. And now it was time to end this once and for all. The courtroom. A week later, I sat across from my mother. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically. Her makeup was still impeccable, her dress perfectly ironed, but something in her stiff posture, the way she glared at me with resentment, made her seem pathetic. My lawyer spoke first, presenting the evidence of the fraud, the harassing emails, and now the break-in. Then it was my mother's turn. She scoffed dramatically and shook her head. Your Honor, this is absurd. My daughter has always been sensitive, emotional. She's blowing this all out of proportion to punish me for a simple misunderstanding. My stomach churned, but I kept my face impassive. But it was just a note. A harmless message. The judge looked at me. Ms. Lopez, do you have a copy of the note? I smiled and held up 2 things. The original note. And a handwriting analysis report. A handwriting analysis report? The judge took the documents and exhaled sharply. Ms. Lopez, this evidence is quite damning. My mother's face twisted. But I'm her mother. You can't actually believe I would harm my own daughter. The judge looked at the documents once more before nodding. Given the circumstances, I'm granting the order of protection. Silence. And then, you can't do this, my mother protested, standing abruptly. Raquel, honey, this is a misunderstanding. The bailiff stepped forward. Ma'am, please exit the courtroom. She turned to me, desperate. Raquel, I'm your mother. I exhaled, meeting her gaze. Not anymore. And then I watched as she was escorted out of my life for good. A month later. At first, the peace was almost unsettling. No more calls. No more manipulative, guilt-tripping texts. No more financial demands disguised as familial love. For the first time in my life, I was free. I got promoted at work. I moved to a better apartment. And most importantly, I started preparing for the person who truly mattered. My baby. One evening, as I was assembling the crib, my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Raquel. My stomach clenched. It wasn't my mother. It was Elena. I know I shouldn't be contacting you, she said quickly, but I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I didn't respond. Mom's a mess, she continued. She still talks about you every day. But I get it now. She used me too. Always made me feel like I had to be the favorite, that I had to be better than you. But the moment I needed something from her, she turned on me, too. I leaned against the wall and exhaled. Is that why you called? I finally asked. Elena let out a bitter laugh. Because you were right about everything. And because, she hesitated, I think I need to get away from her too. I closed my eyes. For years, I had wished for my sister to see the truth, to stop treating me like her competition. And now here she was. Too late, maybe, but for the first time in our lives, we were on the same side. Elena, I said softly, if you really want to get away from her, you know where to find me. A pause. And then, thank you. Click. I set the phone down on the table and turned back to the crib, running my hand over the soft blankets. My mother was gone. My past was behind me. In a few weeks, I would hold in my arms the only person who would ever come first in my life. I smiled. This was the real beginning.